Hello there, everybody. How you doing? I think it says I'm live, so it's good to be alive. I can tell you that. So says we are. So cool. Little Harry Nelson, jump into the fire, baby. Yes. So how is it going? I think I got everything turned on here. So thank you, everyone. Back and so good to see all of you. It has been a interesting yeah, journey, but hey, it's all part of life, and I think I finally got everything up and going. Although I have to tell you, I'd really like to be jamming out to Harry Nelson. So welcome everybody, lots of people. Hello, David Castle, David Barry, how are you, my friend? Good to see you. Big Al, thank you for all the wonderful encouragement. I really do appreciate it. Dave, good to see you. Robert V is in the house. Good to see you, my friend. Favor to everyone. BOSTO, be of service to others. The world needs it. The world needs it. Happy birthday to those who have one, and anniversary. And yeah, it's interesting. We celebrate the day that we're born, but everyone has the party the day we die. I don't know. Death is interesting. And, you know, I think when a parent passes over, it's one of those significant events in an individual's life, because that force that helped us come into this realm has left. And um, those journeys, they say we can pick our friends, but we can't pick our family. Yeah, I know why the chicks leave the nest. You don't want to return back to the nest, because it's just never the way it is. It's just the way it is, isn't it? So, yeah. And it was a lot of time of, reflecting, and that's cool. It's part of the process. So, thank you to all of those who have sent hundreds of emails. No way I can ever get and answer them. So I'm doing it publicly with a big thank you, big hug. Use a I tell you what, in this post world, it's weird. People don't want to touch other people. It's strange. It really is. It's like, wow. Remember the day when you could just walk up to somebody and shake their hand? And, that's how most of us got colds, was particularly in business and in schools. Shake someone's hand, you rub your eye, boom, you got, a cold. And it's just the way it was. And, not today. It's like, geez, ever ride on a plane lately? I mean, it's seriously, it's like um, you want to be in a hazmat suit. It's the best thing I can tell you, or your own little pod, you know, and because, yeah, it's really pretty freaky out there. It truly is. So many of you. Hello, Susie Coob. Good, Paul. Good to see you. And Boots on the Ground. Hello, Scotty Boy and Deborah. So many. I've missed all of you. These these brief interludes that we've become so adaptive to, used to, they're good. It's good therapy. It's a good place. This is a wonderful group of people. Hey, Jenny, what's up? So okay, gotcha. Gonna have Jenny on. Really like your on the wall. That's pretty good show you got going there. Anyway, Posey, good to see you, Mr. Floyd, and Lost in Space, David Casso. Hello, Blanca. Thank you, Brandy. So, Nina, good to see you. I think that actually rhymed on the dime. So, how y'all been? Did you miss me? I don't know. Maybe that's shouldn't ask a question, right? Unless you really want an honest answer. Well, but anyway, so it's good to be back. It's hey, Kayla, good to see you. Let's see. What else is going on? Lots going on, but So observations, this was actually the first time I had really gotten back out into the mix of what this new reality is. And holy crap, it has changed realities. It really has. Um, it's truly. I watched this movie called Synchronic, and the antithesis of the movie was a guy who was a paramedic in New Orleans, and people started freaking out. They were taking this drug called synchronic. Yeah. And the weirdest thing, it was a synthetic hallucinogenic. And people that were taking it, the younger you were, the more intense the effect. The older you were, the less the effect was there, but nevertheless, it was an effect. And what happened was it worked on the pineal gland. And when this chemical hit that gland, it threw you back in time. Actually, it threw you in a river of time. And for instance, I could be sitting here in Colorado and, well, thank you, Shannon. And all of a sudden, you take the pill and depending on, they want to calcify our pineal gland that because yeah, it's the big secret. Well, part of the big secret. But in any case, so like there were some people in the movie in their late 20s. Well, they went to places that, well, for instance, since the movie was in New Orleans, imagine if you went back 4,000 years ago and popped up in that geographical area 4,000 years ago. Well, you probably weren't going to be prepared for the reality of what that reality was. And most likely you didn't return back to this reality because you got ate. So it was a really interesting movie in perspective of this thing we call reality. Folks, I mean, we were out there, my wife and I, and wow, it's very weird. It's very, very weird. A lot of as I told her, when we were in a particularly large area where people come together, so to speak, going through security and what have you. And it was really odd because something's happened, something's happening. We're getting into what they call the peak of cosmic rays. We're entering into this period now, and it jacks with the human brain. It does. Jacks with a lot of part of our bodies, cardiovascular, neurological, nervous system. If you suffer from, chronic illnesses like fibromyalgia, others, you're gonna start feeling it much more. It's going to be much more intense because things are happening, folks. And I took notes of what I was feeling because one of the things I appreciate about this group is we learn from each other. We are a group of empaths. I mean, intuitives, call it whatever you want. I have no doubt we're on the radar because, it makes the power system very nervous when empaths come together. And when you start having people that no longer have the barriers, the walls, to understanding that all of us are psychics, all of us have psychic abilities. And within that term, psychic ability, there's a whole host of other gifts and talents within that, many of which I contend our species has forgotten about. Um, Ah, Illuminati, maybe, yeah. Levette would probably, yeah. It's interesting to see that from an astrological point of view, astrology and what's happening. Folks, we're in for something. I want to share something with you that I never finished. I started writing this book. It was called The Start. I didn't realize it until, when you have time in which you can really just kind of just let your mind be open. And many of us have been, how shall we say, if I said spoken to, that would seem a little, you know, convoluted. What does that mean? Watch the movie Broadcast News. And I got to tell you, I love the whole idea of the main character that was, it was an interesting movie, where he just says the Brosco effect. I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. I love that. I think that's where we're at right now. You know, mad as hell and I don't want to take it anymore. And because we have, in fact, um, we're entering in, boy, when you think about this, how this is going to be a really interesting event for the living. I think it's going to be as well in the spirit realm. I think there's something big about to happen there as well, because as above, so below, as within, so without, right? Uh, whatever is here, it's here. It's here. And it's going to get, we ought to come up with an idea of developing a cap that would actually, and I'm serious about this, because flying is a real risk in more ways than one. But remember, you're just flying in a tube of aluminum. It ain't got no shielding up there, baby. And when you start getting up about 35,000 feet, you're flying right through the thick of it. And if you happen to be at a spike in the cosmic ray hitting the earth, it ain't good for you. You literally flying from, say, Denver to, let's say, Houston. If you're in one of these cosmic ray events, you will have smoked the equivalent of 3 packs of cigarettes. That's how much you're doing to yourself. What you're absorbing. Yeah. And it does a crazy amount of freaking DNA damage. And we're already now, all of us, it's our houses are not built to shield us from cosmic rays. And as they come down and as they begin to hit other neutrons and etc., you start having, the split off where you're getting heavy particles. And when it hits the human brain, it's the big challenge of space, is that you have to be in a shielded environment, because if you're unprotected, particularly in what we would call raw space, you're going to go wacko. We're not designed to handle that type of radiation, and that's what it is. But something's happening. Um, Weird stuff, people. I mean, maybe some of you have been out there much more than I have, but like I said, this was the first time, this post pandemic reality. And holy crap. I mean, I keep on thinking. I read a couple of books while I was gone, and we'll get into that later. Uh, but if you were examining us or just viewing us, observing us, let's say from, I don't know, 10,000 miles up, let's go that far. Uh, you'd have to say, what's up with those things? What, I mean, you look at the way things are going, you'd have to say, what's wrong with that species, those animals down there? It's us. Um, so getting back to, I believe many of us have been psychically pre-warned about this. And I'm going to show you why, because things are happening now that when I started writing this back in 2001, A Space Odyssey, there we go. Most people weren't paying attention to this, but I was getting these downloads and I was writing. And the book was called The Start. But so I'll share something with you in how this is going to tie in with everything else. So let's see, we're going to go over here. All right, so this is chapter 3. This is it's a treacle. It's divided into 3 different parts. There's 3 events. The characters, the antagonist of and the progenitus are all involved throughout all 3 phases. But so I'll just read this. Now, remember, I was writing this back in 2002 on this one. So almost 20 years ago. Alex Turner was in his final year as a graduate student enrolled in the graduate program at Columbia University, seeking his PhD in geoscience. His specialty was earthquakes, and more importantly, predicting the potential for megaquakes. He had spent years in developing a computer program that looks not only at known fault lines, but unknown fault lines as well. Alex had led this hypothesis that the biggest danger to any country comes from those fault lines that scientists have no knowledge of. His theory had gained some ground in recognition from the United States Geological Society because of recent activity from ancient fault lines. This was 20 years ago. Imagine what's happening now. We've seen it, yeah. His program had shown that there was a 78% chance of a 5.0 magnitude earthquake in the east central part of the United States, close to Ohio and Indiana. On June 18, 2002, a magnitude 5 earthquake occurred in southern Indiana, followed by a 1.2 magnitude aftershock on June 25, 2002. Ever since then, he found not only an acceptance to his theory, but funding as well, which made his life a lot easier in conducting his continuing research. The last year, Alex had begun to look into see if there was any relationship between the level of intensity and the amount of earthquakes to the decreasing levels of the Earth's magnetic poles. On the surface, it seemed a long shot, but some of his research was pointing to that there could be some correlation between the two. He was also looking into some of the new findings of recent discovery of enormous faults called megathrust, that places where 2 tectonic plates meet together and interface with one another. Megathrust are the source of the largest and the most devastating earthquakes on Earth. Alex was taking his newly discovered information and entering it into his program to see if there was any known faults that would have mean to be found unknown faults, those that existed a million years ago. Now, the point here was 20 years ago, no one was talking about, there wasn't any YouTube, there wasn't anything about the weakening magnetopause. And I won't bore you with the rest of it, but what his program showed when he put this in here was that when he did his calculations of the weakening magnetopause, the drifting of the magnetic poles, all of these combined, my fictional character, this was all from my head, found out that this was a trigger from a theory that until, folks, only within the last decade has it, in reality, now become what many are now saying is true science. This is what I was talking about. Many of us have received the downloads. I was just writing mine. It's interesting because in my imagination, as I'm writing this, he finds out that what his first set of data conclusions were, he couldn't take it. He started running and rerunning his calculations, and the results were always the same. The mass destruction of heavily populated areas not known to have earthquakes. In addition, the effects of a megaquake in one of these areas would set off catastrophic side effects, which would destroy all buildings and structures used for housing and anything else built by human hands. Very little would be left or survive the mega quake, and this is a mega thrust. The other thing, now remember, I wrote this in 2002. The other thing that was causing Alex cause for alarm was the size of the quake his program was predicting, a 10.0 to 12.5 magnitude earthquake. Now, if it's a magnitude 10 from a magnitude 8, we're talking, to a 12, you're talking a million times more energy. So let me get out of this. I'll tell you how it, when it happens, when the event happens, Houston is wiped off the map. Houston immediately liquefies because of where it sits under sea level. Already the saturation of the water table to begin with. You have liquefaction that takes place. So anyway, now this is all relevant to us today because let me just show you this. There is a theory out there called the 13,000 event. Give me 1 second. There we go. All right. I just want to read a little part of this because you'll get it. And this paper, it's an essay from this particular, and we're going to really study this professor who's writing this, is first of all a series of papers they intend to present in support of our theory of the 13,000, an event that changed the Earth from the Paleocene to the Neolithic in a span of 6 days. Imagine this, folks. Everything that is in the background, we're programmed with this 6-day thing. So it says that there is something happened. Now, did the world get created in 6 days? I don't think so. But, when you religionize it and it becomes a dogma and then it becomes a belief, well, it's pretty hard to put anything else between there. But imagine this. We're about, if you believe in the catastrophism, we're in it. If you want to believe in religious prophets, we're in the tribulation. We're in it. By all evidence, you could say correlating events that are happening now and are already in motion to happen, something has happened. Okay? But let's go back and rethink this. And this paper is interesting. It goes on to say that event happened approximately 13,000 years before our present age. The event was an extinction event that wiped out all megafauna in a continental conflagration of fire and brimstone and created our modern world and climate. Now get this. This event is important to understand because our current climate seems precarious and fated to choke the life out of the planet. Later this week, one of the shows is going to be dealing with the fact the Earth is not what we think it is. The Earth is one single living plant. And those that discovered this is where we get the word planet. The Earth is a single living plant. And it gets really interesting. I got something to show you. Anyway, it says, while a catastrophic fate seems inevitable, in any event, to understand why global warming matters, science must understand how we got to this point. To the end, we ask that the scientists reading this suspend their disbelief in religion, and for the religious reading this to suspend their disbelief in science. They're going on and talking about the effects of climate change, global warming, global cooling matters to this extent. Now, you know, the debate is that it's not the global warming we need to be concerned about. It's like seeing events that happened this weekend in Saudi Arabia, where you have mile after mile after mile after mile of the desert covered in hail, ice. And then you got the whole thing going on in Yemen. But anyway, so the predictions are that our sun is getting set up, and we're detecting the dust now. I think it's going to become ever more present. Well, let's just say it's going to shake the fleas off. All right. Species inflation will exceed the capacity for civilization to feed the masses without a major adjustment in the attitude of humanity towards this planet and towards each other. I'm not going to shout that guy down. I mean, people are on edge out there, folks. I'm just telling you, they're on edge. They're just, wow. It's like, and I am not going to name places or anything else, but there was one particular thing that it was almost as if people were standing on an electrified floor. I'll leave it at that. It's just like, ay, ay, ay. Anyway, this paper went on to say, while the nations of the world seek to exploit the natural resources and disenfranchise their citizens, the weather wars are already here. It's just a fact. We do it. China does it. Russia does it. India does it. Australia does it. Because when you got to feed your people. You can't feed your people. You got problems. I'm going to get David back on with Adapt 2030 because tonight where I live here, we're going to expect, I think, up to a half a foot of snow. This is on top the foot of snow we got last week. But what is going to make this one different, this air is coming out directly from the Arctic. And so all those places that from about where they planted the wheat, they planted the corn, you have in the Mid-South, in the Midwest, you have the fruit trees all blossoming. Well, this cold is going to kill that. So they're saying. So let's get into this really interesting part. So this article addresses the 13,000K event. The 13K event, excuse me. Weighing the evidence currently available. Now get this, folks. We perceive the Earth as being like this for millions of years, but that's not the case at all. They're talking about here the event known as the Younger Dryas, the impact hypothesis, which is yada. However, in the wake of current evidence, the scope of impact, we believe the term 13K theory subsumes the Younger Dryas event and adequately describes the process that began the Holocene epoch. The day before the 13K event, the world was vastly different than the Earth today. The day before the event, the last day of the Holocene era, the Earth was flat. In other words, there were no mountains on the Earth, certainly none other than through volcanism. The atmosphere hung low, continuously moist with fog that stayed close to the ground. The lithosphere was 30,000 feet lower and the seasons unchanging. Now, this is where all that Bible study and having a eidetic memory. So we know that according to, if you read in the book of Genesis, that the garden, the earth, and it's what it says the earth, there was no rain because there was a mist that came and stayed until the mid-morning, and then it would lift. And there was no need for rain. Interesting that, taking this from a non-biblical point of view, it's interesting that they say that the evidence geologically is there. Warm climates around the equator stayed warm. The cold climates further from the equator stayed cold. Free oxygen in the atmosphere was a hearty 30%, as compared to today, which is only 20%. Well, if I did the simple math, that's a hell of a reduction, folks. Whoa. You know what happens if you're deprived of oxygen? Your brain is, right? You become a walking zombie, baby. It says, if you looked up into the sky, you would have seen the sun and two moons. One moon would be Sliver, the Sliver moon as we know today. The other moon was a day star rotating around the earth with the silver moon. I said silver, excuse me. The disk would have appeared large and red on the horizon, with only its bottom crescent ever illuminated by the sun. This planetoid had orbited the earth since the creation of the silver moon, some 4.533 billion years prior. Now, he has all his references there, as you can see. And if you want this, I'll be more than happy to share it with you. The science supporting the 13K event presumably supports religion, but religion is not required to understand the impact of the 13K event. The science of the 13K event stands on its own. How people interpret this event will be hotly debated. The following theory is based on the preponderance of the evidence cited in the endnotes. However, each of you will have to decide for yourselves based upon your own review of the science. Ultimately, you are the jurors who shall determine whether the current paradigm needs changing. It is our belief that the current science of climate cannot be fully understood until the paradigm changes. With a new century must come a new understanding of our planet's history based upon the weight of modern research and an investigation. It goes on to say that this paper is intended to begin that debate. So what happened here? Well, according to what they're finding, the following happened. Before the silver moon was formed, science refers to the Earth as Gaia. The Gaia planet was larger than the Earth is today. The planet Theia was a binary twin of Earth, perhaps smaller, though thought by many to be the size of Mars. We believe Earth formed as a binary star in the solar system, and this planet, Theia, collided with Gaia, the proto-Earth. The collision tore Theia apart. As the Earth rebounded from the impact, the iron core of Theia blew out into space some 238,000 miles, with the admixture of planetary debris that would spin itself into the silver moon. The magnetic pull between the surviving iron core of Theia and the Earth created a magnetic vortex that spun the stony debris into our silver moon. This symbolic creation of the silver moon between the remains of Gaia and the iron core of Theia caused the silver moon to form between Earth and Theia. The three heavenly bodies orbited around the sun 4.5 billion years. Theia forever looked onto the dark side of the silver moon. The silver moon forever blocked Theia from the full sight of humans, allowing only a sharp red crescent to be seen, illuminated directly by the sun. Gaia became the Earth, about 25% smaller planet, with its iron core intact and undamaged. The iron core of Theia continued to orbit the Earth as a second moon until one day, almost 13,000 years before the present 13K, the remnant core of Theia lost its battle to stay in an orbit around Earth. This battle occurred over the span of approximately 700 years. If early Chinese oral tradition is used as support for the event, on a day 13K years ago, Theia's orbit finally degraded until it entered the Earth's atmosphere, exploding in an air blast over North America. The resultant effects of an air blast nearly destroyed the planet. In wake of the destruction was the creation of the Michigan Peninsula Mitt and the Great Lake Basin. The resultant air blast caused a planet-wide catastrophic extinction event that changed our world, the species, Homo sapiens, forever. Well, I can just sit here right now and just say, yep. I mean, when I'm reading this, I can correlate between the two, going, yeah, I can see where one became the other. So this is really interesting. The paper goes on, and it's a short read. It's only 72 pages. Was that this was a 6-day event that when this day, and it says, in fact, we can read it right here. It says, without regard to the secondary religious meaning attributed to it, the 13,000 can literally be said to be the first day of creation, because that was the day of the air blast that spread fire and brimstone on the heads of humans and animals alive at that time. As the molten iron core of Theia coursed from the east to the west in the atmosphere, it would have shredded molten pieces of itself in its wake. Ground zero is a spot roughly above the current city of Flint, Michigan, with the explosion occurring high enough to send a superheated plume of plasma straight below, blasting into the permafrost, carving the Great Lake Basin. At the same time, it liquefied portions of the Laurentine ice sheet, causing up to 6 miles of ice to spin away. Wow. While the Earth continued to spin another at the same exact time that the blast damages the Earth's core over North America, it tilts the Earth off its axis by 23 degrees, and the Earth torques violently from the aftermath. The ice sheets spin counterclockwise, scoring out the Hudson Bay and forcing the crust of the planet to wrinkle everywhere a stony mountain range exists today. Now, this goes against a lot of what's taught in universities in geology, but this is actually another point of view, and they seem to say that they have enough evidence. But the point is, the changes happened so quickly that the way we are today at this 23.5 degree tilt of the Earth, this is now what we think is normal. Now, I don't know, and I'll stop it right there because we've got others to look at. As he continues to pull up this. Aha. So, don't you just love learning? Yeah, of course we do, Steiger. By the way, let me just show you something. So, this is the Top Gun, the danger zone. When the magnetic north, and I think the same goes for the magnetic south, when it crosses, and it's heading there, it's going to be there in a couple of years, the 40-degree longitude mark, there ain't no turning back. I'll just leave it like that. So I told you that the planet has shown signs of how it has at one time was much different. A single living plant, so diversified in its approach of what we define as life, particularly plant life, that our minds are just, we're like a monkey throwing our feces at each other. It's because we were so heavily indoctrinated. We're going to spend some time on what happened 1,000 years ago. Something happened, folks, and it's weirder than it's yeah. Anyway, so worldwide authority has been covering up a secret massive discovery. Keep in mind that this potential discovery is far larger and more important than the discovery of the new world. Then we, the people, have the right to know the truth of it and the right to do with it, with that knowledge, what we want. These discoveries could be absolutely invaluable to the salvation of the human race, and like all other public spaces, they belong to the people, not to the governments. It is our imperative, therefore, to learn the secrets that have been kept from us and claim them for the people of the world. What are we talking about? Well, we're going to get into Kircher here. He wrote back in the 1600s, and he's got an interesting life, that the earth is a living plant and its root systems permeate deep into the earth. It's a living organism that we really don't have modern day understanding because this knowledge was purposely removed. It was reserved only for the royal bloodlines and their adepts. And the science behind this seems ridiculous to many of us today, but only because we are bigoted in our views of what the globe is, what the world is, what our planet is, what Earth is. We can't define what a planet is, but they did. They knew. That's why they termed it planet. And so the belief is that there is a structure, a system that exists beyond man's current knowledge of understanding. But our bodies are, in fact, the very instrument that tells us that this is true, the way our bodies are designed, the way that they were engineered. And again, we're going to go through some of his works. It's an interesting story, particularly with what's happened here, over the weekend with the royals. That Queen Elizabeth I hired John Dee to go to these places where this knowledge had been sealed up. And the story goes as John Dee began to go throughout all of Eastern Europe, Budapest particularly, is when these ancient books were discovered, because the Vatican had already nearly 500 years advantage over the new bloodlines in destroying the knowledge. And it was discovered that there is this whole network. And it's really interesting because, you know, I did the video a couple of years ago on the mountain there in Romania, and how the discovery of the chambers and then subsequently the tunnels. Now, in this knowledge that was, again, was never taught in the seminaries, never taught in the schools, that the discovery of these underground passages, these cities that are actually lit underneath there, it's quite fascinating that there is a whole different race. They're not Homo sapiens. They are a genus of man. I'm not sure exactly what that genus is, because the knowledge has been really suppressed. And again, when we get the interpretation of these philosophers, these researchers, the discoverers, however you want to go it, it's quite interesting to see how the human brain interprets the perceived knowledge of that time. And again, I find these drawings so interesting, and there's hidden knowledge in here. I love this one here. As you can see, the eagle wing that is held through the chain, but the serpent's head, I mean, yeah. It is a knowledge that, again, notice the serpent. You can't get away from it. Everywhere you look, everywhere you study, it's the serpent. It's back. And this is filled with so much symbolism. I mean, so what are we looking at here? Notice the Cardicus being held in the hand of, I'm not sure who, but that looks to me to be light technology. I think one could easily interpret that as potential laser technology. And we could spend a whole lot of time just looking at the symbology of this. But I always tried to always take my mind back and to think about the person who's actually drawing this. I mean, can you imagine what they're thinking? Where was their head? I found this one. So you can see the Kercharian, they had knowledge that, now, where they were off on their assumptions was that the Earth was the center of the universe. But I want to throw something out, because we know our star is in the solar system, is what has us trapped in its gravitational pull. But if you were to look at life, a planet, if it had life, the abundant life, well, certain point of view, it would be the center of the universe. Why wouldn't it be? I mean, it's life. Our star, yeah, it provides the essences and the elements for life to continue here, but there is a life under the earth. Back in Vietnam, they would train a group of soldiers. Every platoon had one, which they called them their tunnel rats. And these guys were trained to, literally, because the North Vietnamese, that's how they moved, was underground through tunnels. And it's really interesting because they'll tell you that even when they're in the deepest part of these tunnels and there was no light, there is still a light. And I just find it interesting that these people had this type of knowledge, this type of understanding. I dare say they don't teach this in school today, but there is a message here. There is a knowledge that we have failed to keep. But yet, I would say within this group, we're probably more psychically attuned to this as like, well, this is not really foreign. Not at all. But again, it's this 1600s, this time period. I've been doing research, and I had time to do it last week, get even deeper into it. Something happened, folks. It's there's a lot of different pieces. Mud Fossil University, it's part of that. There was something that happened. And if you look at it, the 1600s was a divergence of a path that we were going down. I believe it was the path of enlightenment. And then the counter spell came in. Now, what happened in the year 1615? King James Bible. Imagine that. And then 1651. And it's really interesting because there was this clear divergence that took place. We were on to something. We had the most brilliant minds that their knowledge, what they were channeling and trying to express to us that science should not ever be ruled by religion. And we've had nearly since the new regime took over, all of our science has been contaminated and polluted by a religiosity that took the knowledge of the Enlightenment era and hid it. They knew the zodiac, health, how we keep balance, how we maintain the chakras, how we are moved by the planets. And it's not just, pseudoscience, as they would say. And by the way, we're going to get into this. They have down in Patagonia in South America is the land of where the giants are still said to live. But many an expedition that has been written about of the giants of Patagonia, a history that has been altered, been changed, because they don't want us to know. They don't want us to know, damn it. Get this. Excuse me. Let's see, pulls up the screen going there. So, and there is yet one more. Oh, there's more than just one. What am I saying? This is a paper that I'm not going to have time enough to get to it today, but John Jensen, what a man. He has since passed on, but his work so much correlates to what I see, particularly with Ben Davidson and many others that are now beginning to understand that our star, we're in the midst of this galactic sheet. It's here. The changes that are about to take place, we're seeing it amongst the living. Human beings are being changed. Anyway, it gets into how much of what we have considered to be normal uh, actually, we're living in the abnormal. This is not the way the earth should be. And whether we see another event that occurs when the poles, the magnetic poles, realign themselves, they'll be in a whole different position. Are we going to see the cataclysmic jerk that many scientists have theorized? We know that the earth is literally, folks, this is not, it is literally speeding up. Our days, yeah, they're in the milliseconds right now, but our days are getting shorter. And when you think about volume times mass times inertia, you start getting that ball, however you want to say it, spinning faster. That's going to have an effect on the inner earth that will eventually impact us up here. All right. Oh, I could just go on for the next hour on this one, but this one is, again, this guy really went back and the evidence is all there. Let me just put it this way. Don't watch that now. Remember, let's see. Excuse me. Still dealing with the after effects. So I had like hours to write my notes on this because it's happening. That's the interesting thing about it. I have a pilot friend who, when I got wind of this, I wanted to find out if this was true. Gold is what I was told, Al. Yeah, that's what, but who knows? All I do know is this, is that our pilots are having to adjust themselves. They're at the flight itineraries. And which one was it? And it's happening in many of them, but I believe it was the Tallahassee airport where they're seeing some of the biggest adjustments. So are compasses going to become non-effective? I don't know. There's a lot that we don't know. And it's, let's see. Well, Jargo, I don't know about that. I think that comes to the individual. Oh my! I love it. I love it. So it's happening. I mean, and I was telling Lynn, I said, you know, the stars are changing. They are. They it's strange. I know that that sounds completely preposterous, but I'm telling you, they are. See, someone says, I love sitting in the chat room. It's like, see, I've missed this. It's, and we're going to be here. This is what I was telling other people last week, that we're in for an event that, I mean, apparently a lot of souls want to witness this event because they're pouring in at a rate that's unprecedented. It's like, wow, you would have thought that the whole thing would have slowed it down. As I understand, there's going to be what they're going to call in the future the pandemic generation. What a way to go through life. Oh, who are you? I'm the pandemic generation. Yeah. But it's here. It's here. Something is happening. I think that we're seeing, I had a chance just to peruse a lot of these other channels because a lot of times I don't. And it's quite interesting. there seems to be a concurrence that we're changing genetically, DNA wise. Yeah. And if these cosmic rays are intensifying, then that literally would say, yeah, we are. I don't know. How far does it go? I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting. If we get snow in July, like here, then we can go, yeah, there's something going on. And keep in mind, let's see. I don't know. You see, this is what happens when you come in here. It's like, all right, so yeah, it's over with. The hour is gone like that. Tomorrow, Miss Trina and I, a second look. Miss Trina, happy birthday, Trina. It was her birthday, I think, on Friday. So much love to you. And then we'll have her on tomorrow. And I think we're going to be discussing, these events, um, passing of parents and what have you. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. So thank every one of you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it. I'll see y'all tomorrow. I missed y'all. And thank you again for all of you that have sent the emails and the text. It was wonderful. I can tell you your words lifted and edified Lynn and I, and it we felt the energy, and it helped immensely. And so not to get all teary-eyed on that one, but yeah. So all right, everyone, much love to you. Keep well, love yourselves, and remember, we all got to be here. It's going to be fine. No matter what happens, it's going to be an experience. And we just love one another. We embrace one another psychically. We're already connected, and we'll manifest that out into the physical. Jenny, I want to get you on Thursday if you got the time. It would be great. If you got the time. All right, much love to all of you. We'll see y'all tomorrow with Miss Trina. Enjoy the day, and if you're here where I am, get the snow.